The kingdom of Verath lay shrouded in twilight, a land where shadows stretched long and whispered secrets to those who dared to listen. In the dense forests at its edge, where the trees were twisted and the air smelled of moss and iron, a young woman moved with careful steps. Her name was Solara, and she carried a curse as old as the royal line itself, a poison that ran through her veins, a wolf's venom that could end the life of any alpha she touched. For 5 years she had lived in exile. Her family had been executed for a conspiracy against the Alpha King, Kalen, a man whose reputation was as cold and commanding as the steel of his crown. Solara had survived because her poison made her dangerous, yet useless to those who might seek to use her. She wandered the forests, living among shadowed paths and silent streams, hunting to feed herself and hiding from any who might notice her presence. Loneliness had been her companion, fear her teacher, and guilt the weight she carried every day. The forest, however, was not empty of life. Wolves moved silently among the trees, creatures that were both beautiful and terrifying, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Solara had learned to respect them and fear them in equal measure. She knew the old stories, that wolves were once spirits of vengeance bound to the forest by ancient magic. And yet they had never harmed her, not completely. There was a strange, almost understanding in their gaze, as though they knew she too was cursed. That evening a sudden howl split the still air, sharp and full of pain. Solara froze, instinct guiding her through the shadows. The sound came from a clearing up ahead. She crouched low among the roots and moss, her keen eyes spotting a man, surrounded by a pack of wolves. He was young, perhaps a few years older than her, and his cloak bore a sigil she recognized immediately, the royal crest of the Alpha King. Her heart tightened. To touch him would mean death, not just for him but perhaps for herself as well. The wolves circled him, snarling, their fur bristling under the moonlight. Solara did not hesitate. She leapt from the shadows, her presence startling both the wolves and the man. She whispered a soft, commanding tone, her voice calm and steady. The wolves froze, ears twitching, and one by one they backed away. The man fell to his knees, his eyes wide, a mixture of shock and fear. Who are you?" he asked, his voice strained but not unkind. "I am someone who should remain unseen," Solara replied, keeping her distance. Her eyes met his for a moment. There was something in them, a spark of recognition, curiosity, and perhaps fear. "You are the Alpha King." "Yes," he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "And you are not afraid?" Solara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Fear keeps you alive," she said softly, "but it does not make you strong." She watched him rise slowly, brushing the dirt from his cloak. There was a nobility about him, yes, but also a caution that spoke of wisdom and experience. The man studied her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Your presence? It is dangerous." And yet, he hesitated, a flicker of something unspoken passing over his face. "You saved me, why?" Solara did not answer immediately. The truth was difficult. Her life had been a careful balance between survival and solitude. To admit compassion was dangerous. It was a weakness she could not afford. Yet in the quiet of the forest, under the pale light of the moon, she felt something stir within her, an unfamiliar pull toward this man who had every reason to hate her. "You were in danger," she said finally. "And danger is something I understand." Kalen's eyes softened, but only slightly. "I owe you my life, then." "I should know your name." "Solara," she said, the word slipping from her lips as if it had been waiting to be spoken. She did not expect him to remember it, and yet he did. "Solara," he repeated, tasting it. There was a pause, long and quiet, and she felt the forest holding its breath with them. "Why are you here alone in these cursed woods?" Solara looked away, toward the darkened trees where shadows pooled like ink. "Exile," she murmured. "A punishment for sins I did not commit." Kalen's gaze hardened, but he did not press her. He must have sensed the pain beneath her words. Instead, he stepped closer, carefully, not touching. "The forest is dangerous for one such as you," he said. "Yet you move as if it belongs to you." "It does," she said, her voice firmer. "At least I make it so." The night deepened around them. The sounds of distant wolves echoed through the trees, but neither moved. A tension lingered between them, charged with fear, curiosity, and a strange fascination that neither could explain. Solara had spent years avoiding alphas, knowing the danger she carried in her veins. Yet she found herself unable to leave him, even as every instinct screamed caution. Kaelin finally spoke again, quieter this time. "You are not like the others. There is something in you. Something I do not understand." Solara's heart thudded painfully. Something in her chest stirred, an ache she had not felt in years. It was dangerous. Dangerous to feel, to hope, to connect. And yet it was also irresistible. "You would be wise to leave," she said, her words both warning and plea. "To step away now could save your life." He did not move. He only watched, a mixture of defiance and longing in his gaze. "And if I stay?" Solara's breath caught. She did not answer. There was a moment of silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves and the distant howl of a wolf. And then, in the quiet, the unthinkable happened. Her fingers brushed his arm as she stepped slightly to guide him away from the path of danger. A shock ran through her, and she stumbled back instinctively. Her heart raced. He was alive, he was not dead, but the danger was real. Her poison lingered in every pulse of her veins, every heartbeat, a constant reminder of the power she could never fully control. Kaelin looked at her, a flicker of something. Fear? Fascination? Passing across his face. You touched me," he said softly. Did it hurt me?" "No," Solara whispered, though her chest tightened with panic. It did not. She did not know if that was true. It was always a gamble with her poison, a silent threat that could strike without warning. The forest seemed to close around them, shadows shifting with a life of their own. Solara realized something she had never dared before. She was not afraid of him. And that fearlessness terrified her almost as much as the poison in her veins. Kaelin straightened, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then we have a problem," he said quietly, and there was a sharp edge of irony in his voice. "Because I cannot stay away." "And neither can you." Solara felt her chest tighten. His words were a chain, binding her, igniting a longing she had buried deep within herself for 5 long years. She wanted to run, to vanish into the shadows where she belonged. But part of her, an unacknowledged, reckless part, wanted to stay. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of moss, earth, and something wild, something dangerous and beautiful. And in that moment, Solara understood that her exile, her curse, and her life in shadow had all led to this encounter. But the night was not done with them. From deeper in the forest, a low growl rumbled, vibrating through the roots and into the ground beneath their feet. The shadows shifted and Solara's eyes narrowed. There was more than curiosity here. There was danger. Kaelin's hand hovered near his dagger, his gaze scanning the darkness. "What now?" he asked, voice steady but low. Solara took a deep breath, every nerve alert. "Now," she said, voice calm despite the storm in her chest. "We survive. Together." And as the shadows moved and eyes gleamed from the darkness, Solara realized that for the first time in 5 years, she had a choice that could bind her fate with another, or destroy them both. The forest exhaled around them, a silent witness to a dangerous alliance, a spark that could ignite into fire or death. And deep within, Solara felt the first stirrings of something forbidden, something she had long thought impossible. Hope. The wolves circled, a threat and a test. The Alpha King stood at her side, unaware that her curse could either save or end him. And in that tense, fleeting moment, Solara knew that her life, her exile, and her poison had all led to this, the moment her destiny and the Alpha King's became entangled in shadow, blood, and the fragile light of trust. The forest had never felt more alive or more dangerous. The low growls that rumbled in the darkness were not just echoes of the wolves' hunger, but warnings of the unseen forces that guarded the twilight woods. Solara's eyes glimmered in the faint light, her body coiled like a spring, ready for whatever might emerge from the shadows. Beside her, Kaelin, the Alpha King himself, stood with a measured calm that belied the danger around them. "You must be cautious," Solara whispered, her voice carrying through the trees. "The wolves are not the only threat here. Some things in this forest do not answer to the light, or to reason." Kaelin studied her, noting the tension in her posture, the subtle control in her movements. He had been trained to command armies, to read threats and enemies with precision, yet there was something different about her, a silent power, a presence that seemed to bend the forest around her. Then lead me, he said, voice steady but respectful. Show me how to survive here. Solara's lips pressed into a thin line. It was not a request she often made, for the forest had been her only companion for 5 long years. Yet something about him, his gaze, unwavering and unafraid, stirred a feeling she had thought buried forever. Trust. She did not allow it often, but Kaelin had earned a fragile thread of it already. They moved through the shadows, Solara taking careful steps over twisted roots and moss-covered stones, Kaelin following, silent and alert. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to pulse with life, the wind carrying whispers that no human ear could fully comprehend. Why are you here? Kaelin asked after a long pause, breaking the silence. You could live anywhere. Why hide in this cursed place? Solara hesitated. She had avoided answering this question for years. Exile, she said simply. A punishment for my family. And for me. The court wanted me dead, but my poison made me useful enough to survive. So I was sent here to live among shadows. Kaelin's jaw tightened slightly. And yet here you are, alive. Stronger than the exile they tried to impose on you. His eyes softened, a flicker of admiration in their depths. It seems the forest suits you, Solara. She glanced at him, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at her lips. It is not the forest that protects me, she said quietly. It is the wolf within me, and the poison I carry. The mention of her poison caused Kaelin to pause. His hand instinctively brushed near the dagger at his belt, though he did not draw it. You mean to say your blood can kill an alpha? His tone was not accusatory, but measured, curious. And yet, you are standing here alive. I should be dead. Solara's eyes flickered with a mixture of pain and fear. It is not always lethal. The wolf poison is unpredictable. Sometimes it kills. Sometimes it does not. I cannot control it fully, and I have avoided alphas for that reason. Kaelin studied her, noting the tension in her shoulders, the careful restraint in her movements. There was danger here, an invisible thread that could sever life in an instant. But there was also something else, an undeniable strength, a resilience that made her both fascinating and terrifying. They paused near a small clearing where the moonlight spilled like silver over the forest floor. Solara knelt and dipped her hands into a crystal-clear stream, washing the dirt and sweat from her skin. Kaelin watched her silently, the night wind carrying her scent, the wildness of the forest, the subtle danger in her blood, and something softer, almost human, beneath it all. You are different from any I have met, he said finally, breaking the silence. I have faced kings, warriors, and assassins, yet none of them carry the weight you do. Solara looked up at him, her eyes reflecting both caution and something she had not yet named. I do not carry the weight willingly, she whispered. It was given to me. I did not ask for it, nor do I wish it upon anyone else. Kaelin stepped closer, his presence commanding yet unthreatening. And yet, here you are. You carry it, survive it, and still stand. That is strength, Solara. That is power. For a moment, the forest seemed to hold its breath, and Solara felt a strange pull toward him. A connection, unspoken but undeniable, stretched between them. She had spent years alone, her heart guarded, her life measured in shadows and caution. And yet here was a man who looked at her without fear, who seemed willing to see her truth without recoil. Their moment was shattered by a sudden rustling in the underbrush. Solara tensed, every muscle coiled for action. Kaelin's hand moved instinctively to his dagger. From the darkness, a wolf emerged, larger and darker than any Solara had seen before. Its eyes glowed like molten gold, and its low growl vibrated through the ground beneath their feet. This one. It is not like the others, Solara murmured, taking a step forward. It is drawn to the poison within me. The wolf circled them, its gaze fixed on Solara, its muscles tense and ready to strike. Kaelin moved beside her, dagger at the ready, but he did not interfere. He trusted her. Solara inhaled deeply, feeling the familiar pulse of danger in her veins. She could control it, just barely. She focused on the wolf, letting the poison within her hum with restrained energy. Slowly, deliberately, she extended her hand. The wolf froze, its growl lowering to a cautious rumble. Stay, she whispered, her voice calm but commanding. I am not your enemy. The wolf hesitated, then, to Kaelin's astonishment, lowered its head slightly and backed away. Solara exhaled, her pulse still racing. It tests me, she explained. The wolf feels the poison in my blood. It respects power, even in those who are not of its kind. Kalen studied her with a mixture of awe and concern. You wield a dangerous gift, he said softly. One that could destroy lives. And yet you control it with care. Solara nodded, a shadow crossing her expression. Control is fragile. One wrong step, one touch. And I could kill even you, Kalen. He met her gaze unflinching. And yet, I am here. I am not afraid, her breath caught. Those words, simple yet powerful, stirred something within her she had thought dead. Fear, yes, but also longing. A desire to be seen, to be understood, even by someone who could die because of her. The wind shifted, carrying a faint scent of iron and smoke. Solara's instincts screamed that the forest was not finished testing them. She sensed movement beyond the trees, shadows shifting where no wolves tread. Something approaches, she warned, her voice low. We are not alone. Kalen's hand tightened around his dagger, but his gaze never left hers. Then we face it together, he said. For the first time in 5 years, Solara allowed herself to step close to another human, an alpha, the very king she had once feared and now found herself inexplicably drawn to. Her poison hummed through her veins, a reminder of the danger she carried, but also of the bond forming between them. And then, from the darkness, a pair of glowing eyes appeared. Larger than any wolf, sharper, intelligent in a way that sent a shiver down Solara's spine. It was a predator of the forest, a creature older than any tale. Drawn to the powerful energy she exuded, the beast lunged, and in that instant Solara's training, her instinct, and her poison merged into a single controlled force. She moved faster than thought, placing herself between the creature and Kalen. Her hands glowed faintly with the power of her curse, and the beast recoiled, hissing, but did not strike again. Kalen watched in stunned silence. Your blood. It frightens even the shadows of this forest, he said. Solara's chest heaved. It frightens me as well, she admitted, but it is the only thing that keeps me alive. The forest fell silent once more, save for the rustle of leaves and the distant cries of wolves. Kalen took a step closer, his presence warm against the cold night. You could have killed me, he said softly. Yet here I am, still standing, and I still want to be here by your side. Solara's pulse quickened. The words were a risk, dangerous in their honesty. And if I cannot control the poison next time? She asked. If I hurt you. He smiled, faint but steady, a king's smile tempered by something more personal, more intimate. Then we face it, together. That is what it means to be alpha, and to trust. The wind whispered through the trees again, carrying a promise of danger, of trials yet to come. Solara realized that the night was only the beginning. The forest, the wolves, her poison, they were all tests. And Kalen, the Alpha King, had stepped into her world willingly. For the first time in 5 years, Solara felt a flicker of hope. Dangerous, fragile, and bright. A spark that could ignite fire or destruction. And as the shadows moved and the unseen creatures of the forest watched, she understood that her fate, and Kalen's, was now intertwined in ways neither of them fully comprehended. The morning sun barely touched the forest floor, leaving the shadows long and the air damp with mist. Solara had not slept, nor had Kalen. The events of the previous night, the wolf, the shadows, the pulse of danger in every heartbeat, had left them both restless. But as the pale light filtered through the twisted branches, Kalen finally spoke, breaking the silence that had stretched since the first light of dawn. You should not have been alone in these woods, he said, his voice calm, yet carrying a weight of authority and concern. Even with your power, you cannot control everything. Solara pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders, her eyes scanning the forest around them. Control is an illusion, she said softly. The forest has its own rules. The wolves, the shadows, they follow their own paths. I only survive by understanding them. Kalen regarded her quietly, noting the calm precision in her tone, the way her body moved with alert readiness. She was more than a woman. She was a force shaped by years of fear, exile, and survival. Yet you survive, he said finally. Not just survive, you thrive. That is remarkable. Solara's lips curved slightly, a shadow of a smile. Thriving is a luxury I have never known. Survival is all I have. For a moment they walked in silence, the crunch of leaves beneath their feet the only sound. Kalen's gaze drifted to her hands, noting the faint stains of mud and blood, the subtle strength in her fingers. She was fragile in appearance, Yet every movement betrayed a hidden power, a skill honed in years of solitude and danger. "I do not understand your curse fully," Kaelin said cautiously, breaking the quiet, "but I sense it is more than a weapon. There is something else in it, something you have not told me." Solara's heart skipped. She had kept the truth hidden for 5 years, fearing that even the smallest disclosure could be dangerous. Yet Kaelin's eyes, steady, patient, unafraid, made her hesitate. There was something in his presence that demanded honesty even if it was dangerous. "My poison. It is unpredictable," she admitted slowly. "It can kill an alpha with a touch, but sometimes it can heal in ways I do not fully understand." Kaelin froze, his expression caught between disbelief and curiosity. "Heal?" he echoed, his voice low. "You mean it is not only a weapon?" Solara shook her head. "I do not know why. I have never tested it deliberately. It is as if the poison carries a memory of old magic, old blood. I have survived it, and the forest seems to accept me, but I have never known what I am truly capable of." The words hung between them, thick with tension and mystery. Kaelin, though cautious, was intrigued. Here was a woman who carried death and life in her veins, a being of power that defied reason, and yet she was not cruel, not malicious. Her strength was tempered by restraint, by understanding, by survival. "Then we must learn," he said finally. "We must understand this together. If you can control it, if we can harness it, it could protect this kingdom from threats we cannot yet see." Solara's pulse quickened. The proposition was dangerous, yes, but it was also tempting. For the first time in years, she did not feel the crushing weight of solitude. She felt the possibility of partnership, of someone standing beside her rather than fearing her, and though fear still lingered, curiosity and longing pressed forward unbidden. "I do not know if I can control it," she whispered. "The poison is as much a part of me as the blood in my veins. It is alive, in its own way." Kaelin stopped walking and turned to her, his gaze unwavering. "Then we will start slowly. You will teach me and I will teach you. Together we will learn its limits." Solara hesitated, caught between instinct and desire. To trust an alpha so completely, to reveal the secret of her curse, was dangerous beyond measure. Yet something in Kaelin's presence, something in the steady way he met her gaze, made her nod. "Very well," she said softly. "But you must understand. A single mistake could end you." Kaelin inclined his head, accepting the risk. "Then I will be careful," he said, "and I will trust you." Their cautious truce was tested almost immediately. As they moved deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close around them, the mist thickening and the air growing colder. Shadows shifted unnaturally, and the distant cries of wolves carried an urgent tone. Solara's instincts screamed that they were not alone. From the darkness, figures emerged, humans but not allies. They wore the colors of the royal court, yet their intentions were unmistakable. Poisoned arrows were already in the air, and Solara moved instinctively, placing herself between Kaelin and the threat. Her poison hummed in her veins, a latent energy that pulsed with restrained fury. Kaelin acted with precision, deflecting one arrow and moving to protect her. The confrontation was brief but intense. Solara's control over her poison allowed her to disarm one attacker without harm, while Kaelin subdued another. Yet the encounter left them both shaken, aware that the danger was more than just forest creatures. It was human malice, cunning and deliberate. "They know about you," Kaelin said quietly once the attackers had fled. "They know what you carry in your blood." Solara's chest tightened. "Then they will try again," she said. "And they will not stop until either you are dead or I am captured." Kaelin's gaze softened, and for the first time he allowed a vulnerability to show. "Then we must be ready, not just for the forest, but for the court as well." The weight of his words settled over Solara. She had spent years hiding, surviving alone, trusting no one. And yet here was an alpha king, a man whose very presence could have killed her with a single misstep, choosing to stand beside her. The realization stirred something deep within her, a fragile hope, a longing for connection she had long denied herself. As they continued their journey through the forest, Solara began to explain the nature of her curse in careful, measured detail. She told him of the wolf poison's origins, of the magic woven into her bloodline, of the delicate balance between life and death that she navigated every day. Kaelin listened intently, absorbing each word, never judging, never recoiling. "It is a dangerous gift," he said finally. but one that, if understood, could change everything. Your power, it could protect the kingdom. It could protect us. Solara's breath caught. His words were both promise and warning. To hear that someone not only accepted her danger but saw value in it, it was overwhelming. For the first time in years, she felt a fragile sense of belonging. Not in the court, not in the forest, but here beside him. The sun began to rise higher, casting golden light through the misty trees. Solara and Kaelin reached a small clearing where the air felt lighter, almost serene. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, to feel the warmth of sunlight on her skin, and to acknowledge the bond that had begun to form between them. But even in this fleeting moment of peace, Solara knew that danger was never far behind. The rival faction at court, the curses in her blood, the unpredictability of the wolf poison, all of it threatened to unravel the fragile trust and connection they were building. Kaelin sensed her tension and reached out, placing a steady hand near hers, not touching, but close enough to offer reassurance. "We face it together," he said quietly. "Whatever comes, we will face it side by side." Solara looked at him, the warmth in his eyes meeting the storm in her own heart. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust him fully, but the shadows of her past and the danger in her veins reminded her that nothing was ever simple. And then, without warning, the forest shivered with movement. From the dense trees, a massive wolf larger than any they had seen emerged. Its eyes glowed with intelligence and fury, and Solara's body tensed instinctively. This was no ordinary wolf, it was drawn by her blood. Her curse, and perhaps something even older, something that had waited in the shadows for 5 long years. Kaelin stepped forward, his presence unwavering. "Stay behind me," he said softly, though he knew she would not. Solara exhaled, feeling the poison stir in her veins, alive and aware. She met Kaelin's gaze, and for the first time they truly faced the danger as one. The forest held its breath, the mist swirling around them, and in that moment Solara realized the truth. The bond between them was no longer optional. It had begun, fragile and uncertain, but real. The wolf snarled, muscles coiled for the strike, and Solara knew that what happened next would define both their fates. The forest was no longer just a place of exile. It was the crucible where their trust, their power, and their hearts would be tested. And as the wolf lunged, Solara stepped forward, the poison in her veins humming with controlled fury, ready to defend the Alpha King and perhaps for the first time, to let someone see her fully without fear. The massive wolf froze midair, its golden eyes locking onto Solara as she inhaled sharply. The poison within her veins stirred, a restless force she had spent 5 years suppressing. Her heart raced, not with fear, but with the recognition that the moment she had feared and longed for had arrived. She was no longer alone, and the Alpha King, Kaelin, stood at her side, steady and unwavering. "You can do this," Kaelin said quietly, his hand hovering near hers but not touching. "Trust yourself. Trust what you carry." Solara's gaze flicked to him, the vulnerability in his eyes giving her courage she did not know she still possessed. She nodded once, sharp and deliberate, and focused on the wolf before them. Every fiber of her being screamed to act, to harness the poison in her blood, and for the first time she allowed it to flow freely, but carefully. A pulse of energy radiated from her, subtle yet undeniable. The wolf froze mid-leap, its body trembling as though struck by an invisible force. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the mist swirling around them like spirits of old. Kaelin's eyes widened, both in awe and concern. He had seen warriors and sorcery, but nothing like this. Solara exhaled slowly, focusing her mind on the creature's intent. "I am not your enemy," she whispered, her voice carrying a strange power. "You seek what is mine, but you will not take it." The wolf hesitated, growling low, a deep vibration that seemed to echo through the trees. Its eyes softened slightly as though acknowledging her command. Solara felt her own pulse steady, the poison in her veins harmonizing with her will rather than threatening it. The moment passed, the tension in the forest breaking as the wolf slowly backed into the shadows, its golden gaze lingering for a final heartbeat before disappearing entirely. Kaelin exhaled, relief flooding his face. "You controlled it," he said, awe and admiration mixing in his voice. "You turned danger into something else entirely." Solara lowered her hands, her body trembling with adrenaline. "I do not yet know how far I can go," she admitted, her voice quiet, almost vulnerable. "But I can survive. I have to survive." Kaelin stepped closer, his presence grounding her, And you will, he said firmly. Not alone. We face it together. There was a pause heavy with unspoken words. The bond between them had shifted from curiosity and wariness to trust and an unspoken understanding. The forest, with all its shadows and danger, was no longer a prison. It was a stage for something neither of them had anticipated. Connection. They moved deeper into the forest, Kaylin following her guidance as she led them toward a hidden path she had discovered long ago. The trees grew denser, the mist thickening, and the air carried the faint scent of iron and wildflowers, a contradiction of life and danger. Solara's instincts were sharp, every sense attuned to potential threats, yet her mind remained focused on Kaylin. You could return to your court, she said after a long silence. You could leave this forest, leave me, and regain the power and safety you are entitled to as Alpha King. Kaylin shook his head. And abandon you? After witnessing your strength, your courage, I could not. This is no longer about duty or crown. This is about trust, Solara. And about something else I do not yet understand, but I want to. Her chest tightened, and for a moment words failed her. No Alpha had ever spoken like this. No man had ever looked at her as though her danger, her curse, and her solitude were parts of a whole to be respected rather than feared. She felt a fragile thread of warmth, a spark she had buried under years of exile and self-imposed isolation. The forest began to thin, revealing a cliff that overlooked a valley blanketed in mist. Solara stopped at the edge, surveying the landscape. She had come here often, finding solace in the view, yet today it felt different. Today she was not alone. Kaylin stepped beside her, close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from him, but careful not to cross the line she had yet to define. You show me your world, he said softly. The forest, the wolves, your exile, and I see it as you do. Dangerous, yes, but also beautiful. Solara glanced at him, the morning light catching the edges of his face, highlighting both strength and something gentler, more intimate. Beauty and danger often coexist, she replied. That is the nature of the forest, and of life. Kaylin's hand brushed briefly against hers, deliberate yet fleeting. A spark of energy, unseen but deeply felt, raced through her. It was not the poison, it was the connection, fragile and electric, a thread between two souls that had been pulled together by fate and necessity. But even in that fragile piece, the danger of the court loomed. Their recent encounter with the rogue faction had proven that Solara's blood was both a weapon and a target. Kaylin's mind, trained to see threats before they manifested, already considered strategy. You must come with me to the court, he said, tone firm but gentle, not as a prisoner nor as a threat, but as an ally. Your knowledge, your power, and your curse, they are too important to leave hidden here. Solara's heart raced at the thought. The court was a place of intrigue, betrayal, and politics she had spent years avoiding. To step into it now at Kaylin's side would place her at the center of danger, yet it would also allow her to confront her past, face her enemies, and perhaps even understand the true potential of her curse. I am not sure I can trust them, she admitted. The court killed my family. They would see me dead before they see the truth. Kaylin nodded, understanding the fear that lingered in her eyes. Then we change that, he said. Together. You will not face them alone. I will be there, and if they threaten you, I will protect you. The promise settled over her like sunlight breaking through mist. For the first time, she believed that someone might stand beside her, not as a judge, not as an enemy, but as an ally, a protector, and perhaps something more. Their journey back toward the edges of the forest was tense. Every rustle of leaves, every distant howl set Solara's senses on edge. Yet Kaylin's presence grounded her. With him beside her, the forest felt less like a prison and more like a proving ground. As they neared the forest's edge, a messenger arrived, a hawk carrying a sealed scroll bound in red ribbon. Kaylin broke the seal with practiced hands, scanning the message quickly, his brow furrowed, his jaw tightening as he read. The court, he muttered, handing the scroll to Solara. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it. The seal bore the mark of the rival faction, the very ones who had tried to kill them in the forest. The message was simple, yet chilling. Bring the woman to the court. Or the Alpha dies. Solara's pulse quickened. Her curse, her poison, her past, all of it had converged in this single moment. The choice was clear. She could step into the court, face her enemies, and risk her life and Kaylin's, or remain hidden in the forest and leave the Alpha King vulnerable to their plots. Kaelin placed a hand on her shoulder, firm and grounding. "Whatever happens, we face it together," he said. "Your curse, my crown. Our fates are entwined now." Solara exhaled, feeling the weight of her decision settle over her. The forest, the wolves, the exile, none of it mattered as much as the bond forming between her and Kaelin. Dangerous, fragile, and untested, but real. As the sun rose higher, breaking through the mist and illuminating the forest, Solara knew that the next step would define them both. To face the court was to confront not only political danger, but the truth of her curse, the power within her, and the growing connection between her and the Alpha King. The forest seemed to whisper its approval, or perhaps its warning. Solara did not know. She only knew that she could no longer hide, could no longer avoid the path destiny had set before her. And as she looked at Kaelin standing steady and resolute, she felt the stirrings of a realization she had fought for 5 years, that her poison, her exile, and her life in shadows had all led to this moment. A moment of trust, of courage, and of the possibility of love in a world that had shown her little but danger and betrayal. The edge of the forest gave way to the distant walls of the court. A wind carried the scent of smoke, stone, and intrigue. Solara inhaled deeply, feeling both fear and resolve. She and Kaelin would step into the court together, carrying secrets, power, and a bond neither fully understood, but one that could change everything. And deep within, the wolf poison pulsed, alive and aware, ready to protect, to challenge, and perhaps to reveal the truth that had waited 5 long years within her veins. The gates of the court loomed before Solara and Kaelin, tall stone walls casting long shadows over the sunlit courtyard. The air was heavy with tension, thick with the whispers of courtiers, advisors, and spies. The rival faction's threat hung like a blade over them both. Bring the woman or the Alpha dies. Solara's heart pounded, not from fear of the court's politics, but from the knowledge of what her blood could do and the danger of losing control. Kaelin walked beside her, steady and confident, though she could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on him. He had placed trust in her, and she had placed trust in him. Together they were a force neither expected, bound by circumstance, danger, and a fragile thread of something deeper, something that stirred in the quiet spaces between their words and glances. "The poison," Kaelin said quietly, his voice barely audible over the murmurs of the courtyard. "It will not control you. I trust you." Solara exhaled, focusing on the energy within her veins. The wolf poison was restless, alive, unpredictable. It could kill, or it could heal, or it could protect. And today she would discover which it would be. "Then we begin," she whispered, her voice steady, yet carrying the weight of years of exile and fear. The rival faction awaited them in the central hall, a chamber lined with banners and filled with nobles whose faces betrayed both curiosity and malice. At the center, a single figure, the faction's leader, stepped forward, arrogance in every movement. "Ah, the wolf child," the man sneered, and the Alpha King at her side. "Tell me, Kaelin, did you truly believe you could enter my halls unchallenged?" Kaelin's jaw tightened, but he did not speak. His eyes met Solara's, a silent reassurance that whatever came next, they faced it together. Solara stepped forward, letting her presence fill the hall. She could feel the poison in her veins stirring, sensing the tension, the fear, and the hidden motives in the room. Slowly, deliberately, she allowed it to hum through her, a subtle, restrained pulse that radiated without threatening yet demanded attention. "You sought to harm us," she said, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable authority. "To use my blood as a threat. You will not succeed." The faction leader laughed, but the sound was sharp, brittle. "And what can you do, girl? You are but a child of exile, a cursed thing hiding in the forest. Your poison may kill, but can it truly stand against the court?" Solara's eyes narrowed, and the room seemed to quiet around her. She could feel the poison's energy connecting to the very air, resonating with the ancient magic woven into the stones, the banners, and even the bloodlines of the nobles present. Her curse was not just in her veins. It was part of her being, part of the power she had honed over 5 long years. Kaelin stepped forward, placing himself beside her, not as a shield, but as an equal. "Do not underestimate her," he said, his voice carrying across the hall. "She is not your enemy, but if you challenge her, you will see the force you cannot imagine." The faction leader's eyes flickered, and for the first time, doubt shadowed his expression. Solara could feel it. The poison within her pulsed in response, controlled yet alive, a force both protective and commanding. She extended her hand subtly, letting the energy radiate just enough to command attention, to make the nobles pause and reconsider their arrogance. "Leave, or face what you cannot comprehend," Solara said, her voice steady, each word deliberate, each one imbued with the pulse of her curse. "I carry power beyond your understanding. I carry danger in my veins, but I carry restraint in my heart. Do not force me to unleash what I have contained for 5 long years." The faction leader faltered, sensing the energy around her, the subtle yet undeniable threat in her presence. Kaelin's hand brushed briefly against hers, a grounding touch that reminded her she was not alone. Together they were stronger than any threat in the room. "You cannot be serious," the man stammered, though his confidence wavered. "You would destroy everything." Solara's gaze cut through him, unwavering. "I will not destroy for pride, but I will protect those I trust. I will not allow my curse to be used as a weapon against the Alpha King, or against me." "Step aside." The hall was silent. The nobles exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that the tide had shifted. The poison within Solara's veins hummed with restrained energy, alive and aware, ready to act if the words were not enough. Kaelin's presence beside her amplified the effect, a union of trust, courage, and command that few had ever witnessed. Finally, the faction leader's shoulders slumped, and he took a step back, muttering words of retreat. The hall seemed to exhale in relief, the tension dissipating as Solara and Kaelin's authority became undeniable. Solara allowed herself a small, controlled exhale. She had maintained control, restrained the poison, and yet made her power known. She had survived the court's intrigue, faced threats both human and supernatural, and proven that her blood, though dangerous, was a force of protection and power. Kaelin turned to her, his eyes soft with admiration and something deeper. "You did it," he said quietly. "You controlled what many could not even begin to understand." Solara met his gaze, her own pulse still racing but her resolve steady. "I had to," she said. "Not just for you, but for myself, for the life I have built, even in exile, for the trust I have learned to give." Kaelin stepped closer, his presence warm and grounding. "And yet, you did not stand alone. You allowed me to be here beside you." Solara's lips curved slightly, a shadow of a smile. "Yes," she admitted, "because even the strongest must trust someone, even the Alpha King." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning, carrying years of fear, survival, and the slow blossoming of something more. The hall was no longer a place of threat. It was a place where power, trust, and connection converged. The faction leader had retreated, but Solara knew that their victory was not just in survival, it was in choice. She had chosen to trust, chosen to harness her power, and chosen to stand beside Kaelin not as an exile, not as a threat, but as a partner. Kaelin reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The contact was brief, careful, yet it carried a promise deeper than words. "We face what comes next together," he said. "The court, the dangers, the poison, and whatever else fate sends." Solara's heart swelled, a mixture of relief, pride, and something tender she had almost forgotten. "Together," she echoed. Outside the hall, the forest seemed to hum in approval, as if acknowledging that the exiled child of poison had found not only a purpose, but a companion who respected, trusted, and stood by her. The wolf within her stirred, content for now, restrained but alive, aware that its bond with the Alpha King's heart had formed something indestructible. Days passed, and the court slowly accepted her presence, not as a threat, but as a force that could not be ignored. Solara's knowledge, courage, and controlled power became invaluable. The poison in her veins, once feared, was now seen as a potential protector of the realm, a secret weapon balanced with wisdom and trust. Kaelin and Solara spent their days navigating intrigue, training together, and slowly unraveling the mysteries of her curse. Their bond deepened, forged in danger, mutual respect, and the quiet moments when words were unnecessary, and presence alone spoke volumes. One evening, on the palace balcony overlooking the valley, Kaelin spoke softly. "You have changed the court, Solara. You have changed me. I see the strength of your heart as clearly as I see the power in your blood." Solara's gaze met his, the amber light of sunset catching in her eyes. "And you have changed me," she said. "You have shown me that trust is not weakness, and that connection does not mean surrender. I have learned that I can survive not alone, but with someone who chooses to stand by me. Kaelin stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking. And I choose to stand by you. Always, the words, simple yet profound, carried the weight of everything they had faced. The forest, the wolves, the curse, the rival faction, and the fragile, undeniable connection that had formed between them. Solara felt the poison within her settle, alive but calm, aware that it was not just a weapon, but a part of her being intertwined with courage, love, and trust. The Alpha King's presence grounded her, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt complete as the sun dipped below the horizon. Painting the sky in gold and crimson, Solara and Kaelin stood side by side, hands lightly touching, hearts aligned, ready to face whatever came next. The exile was over. The court had acknowledged her power, and the wolf poison that had haunted her life now pulsed in harmony with her courage, her trust, and her newfound connection. The world was dangerous, full of shadows, intrigue, and magic, but together, Solara and Kaelin had found a bond stronger than fear, a trust deeper than the poison in her veins, and a love forged in the fires of survival and courage. And as night fell over the court, the stars reflecting in the valley below, Solara knew that for the first time she was not alone. She had found a partner, an equal, and a protector. The curse in her blood was no longer just a burden. It was part of her identity, part of her power, and part of the bond that would guide them through every shadow, every threat, and every challenge the world could throw their way. The Alpha King's hand brushed hers once more, steady and reassuring. "We face the future together," he said, "a promise as certain as the stars above." Solara nodded, her heart full, her courage unwavering. "Oh,